You know, when most of us think about cannabis, our minds almost immediately jump straight to THC, or maybe CBD, right? Well, it turns out there's an entirely different group of compounds that might actually be just as important in shaping your overall experience. Today, we're talking about the invisible architects of cannabis, terpenes.
So what really shapes your cannabis experience? For literally decades, a single metric basically dominated the entire conversation. But as we're going to see, the true architects behind the plant's unique effects and its distinct aromas actually lie in a highly aromatic, microscopic world of completely different compounds.
It's like we're looking at a huge shift in thinking here. On one side, you have the old paradigm, which was just relentlessly chasing a high THC percentage. But on the other side, we have the new standard, embracing terpene complexity. Terpenes are essentially the missing piece of the puzzle. They do so much more than just create pleasant smells. They fundamentally influence how we perceive the plant, and they contribute heavily to its ultimate effects.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll go beyond THC and CBD. Second, we'll uncover nature's hidden defense system. Third, we'll meet the major terpenes you really need to know. Fourth, we'll dive into the highly debated entourage effect. And finally, we'll look at how all this knowledge is completely changing the future of cannabis quality.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, Beyond THC and CBD.
So what exactly are terpenes anyway? Well, they're organic compounds, and they are everywhere. Scientists have actually identified more than 30,000 different terpenes across the plant kingdom. Think about it. If you've ever smelled a fresh pine forest, cut into a lemon, or just crushed a basil leaf between your fingers, you've already interacted with this massive botanical family. They are quite literally all over the natural world. Now, if we zoom in on the cannabis plant specifically, it is exceptionally rich in these compounds. Researchers have identified more than 200 distinct terpenes in cannabis so far. And while only a fraction of these occur in large enough amounts for us to easily notice, they are absolutely crucial to the plant's overall chemical makeup. Where do they actually come from? Well, these fragrant little molecules are produced primarily in the plant's glandular trichomes. If you've ever looked closely and noticed those sparkling, sticky crystals covering cannabis flowers, yep, those are the trichomes. Think of them as miniature chemical factories. And what's really fascinating here is that these are the exact same tiny resin glands that manufacture cannabinoids like THC and CBD. The plant is producing this highly complex mixture all in one microscopic location.
Moving right along to Section 2, Nature's Hidden Defense System.
You might be wondering, why does the plant put so much precious energy into producing these incredibly strong aromas in the first place? I mean, it's not just to smell good for us. These terpenes are actually a brilliant form of biological warfare and survival. The strong aromas act as a built-in defense system to repel damaging insects and hungry herbivores. But that's not all. They also act as an environmental shield, protecting the plant against intense heat, ultraviolet radiation, and even pathogens. And amazingly, some terpenes literally act like a distress signal. They attract beneficial insects that swoop in to hunt the pests that are trying to eat the plant. So those pleasant smells we enjoy, they're actually born from millions of years of hardcore evolutionary adaptation. All right. Let's get into Section 3. Meet the major terpenes.
Let's meet the most abundant players in the cannabis experience, and you're probably going to recognize a lot of these from your own kitchen or garden. First up is myrcene. You'll also find this in mangoes and hops, and it gives off a very earthy, musky aroma. Historically speaking, myrcene-rich varieties are heavily associated with relaxing effects. Next is limonene. Just like it sounds, it's abundant in citrus fruits, produces a bright lemon aroma, and is generally tied to more uplifting experiences. Then we have pinene, which is found in pine needles. It gives you that familiar, crisp forest scent and is currently being studied for potential anti-inflammatory properties. Linalool, famously found in lavender, has a sweet floral aroma and is heavily studied for its calming effects. Every single terpene brings its own unique flavors and potential effects to the table. But I want you to really consider that last one, Caryophyllene. You'll find it in black pepper, which explains its spicy aroma. What makes Caryophyllene uniquely fascinating is that it actually behaves like a dietary cannabinoid. That means it can interact directly with our body's endocannabinoid system, specifically the CB2 receptors. How cool is that?
Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, the entourage effect explained. So if terpenes smell completely different from one another, and some can even interact with our bodily receptors, do they actually change how cannabis biologically affects us? This is a massive scientific debate right now. For years, the industry has heavily promoted something called the entourage effect. Basically, this is the theory that cannabinoids, terpenes, and other plant compounds interact synergistically to create effects that are totally different from consuming THC all by itself. Simply put, the whole plant behaves differently than its isolated parts.
But we do have to be careful and separate proven evidence from active research. Look, it is an undisputed fact that terpenes contribute enormously to flavor and aroma. When you smell bright citrus, deep pine, or sharp fuel, you are unequivocally smelling terpenes. However, the synergistic effects, meaning how they might interact with cannabinoids once they are inside our bodies, while that remains a very active area of research. While some lab studies definitely show potential interactions, researchers are still debating just how much influence terpenes have at the standard concentrations you'd actually find in everyday products. Responsible science always distinguishes between hard evidence, promising theories, and pure marketing claims.
But here's a quote that brilliantly illustrates why all of this matters so much. A flower containing 25% THC and high limonene may smell and feel very different from another flower containing 25% THC and high myrcene. This right here is the aha moment. These aromatic compounds are a major reason why two plants with the exact same THC levels can provide two completely different sensory experiences. It's a real game changer.
And finally, Section 5, the future of cannabis quality. Knowing what we know now about the incredible complexity of terpenes, how is this shifting the modern industry away from purely THC-driven metrics? First, we have to look at the agricultural side of things. Terpenes are highly volatile. That just means they evaporate very easily. Because of this, growers face a massive challenge during the post-harvest steps of drying, curing, and storage. Improper handling, too much heat, oxygen, or light can all rapidly destroy these delicate aromatic compounds. You could have a perfectly grown crop, but it can lose all its aromatic complexity if those three final steps aren't handled with absolute precision.
And because of that fragility, modern growers, breeders, and really educated consumers are now prioritizing a much more holistic profile of quality. For years, people just assumed higher THC automatically meant better quality. But today, the focus is really expanding. We're looking at aroma and flavor complexity, specific terpene compositions, overall cannabinoid diversity, and the sheer quality of cultivation and post-harvest handling. Honestly, a flower with moderate THC but an exceptional, carefully preserved terpene profile might actually give you a much more enjoyable experience than one with extremely high THC but absolutely zero aromatic complexity. Breeders get this now, and they're selectively designing plants just for these unique terpene combinations. So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on as we wrap up today's explainer. Does a richer aroma tell a better story than THC percentage ever could? The next time you catch notes of lemon, pine, lavender, or spice, just remember that you are experiencing the remarkable, invisible architecture of terpenes, compounds that evolved to protect the plant in nature and are now completely redefining how we understand quality. Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep exploring.